and then we can. Awesome, thank you.
Good.
So, welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, and welcome to Rich Sidney, the third of 4 candidates running for open select board seats. We've already had Kristen Pope and Kat Monahan, and now Rich, who is probably getting candidate forum fatigue syndrome or something. There have been so many of these, but we feel really lucky that we're able to have one candidate at a time at the forum, which hopefully is good for you too as well, Rich. So that you feel that you can take as much time as you want to expand on an answer or a topic. And of course, we had you here when you were running for the open seat. We were glad that you got that, and we're certainly interested in what you have to tell us. I think you pretty much know most folks. Let's do introductions this way. Rich, scan the windows, and anybody that you don't recognize, ask them to introduce themselves, unless you want everybody to do it. But
it's probably a good idea for everybody to do it, just for people who might be watching the recording later.
Well, that's true. Very good point. Okay. He's better at this than I am. So again, well, you know me, fellow ex-commuter into the city of Boston, and I moderate this group and do my volunteer work mostly with the local church. Sarah?
And Rich also knows me, town meeting member for many years, interested in environmental causes of various sorts, looking to organize Earth Day again this year. And that's enough about me for now.
Martin?
Martin Kessel, chair of the Open Space Committee for many years, and over the last year, I've managed to get on a bunch of controversial committees in town. The Dam Committee, and now the five Auburn Committee, which actually our work's done on that, but the issue's not done. But yeah, right in the middle of all of these current topics, and I'm also co-hosting the Coffee with a Purpose.
Great. Elaine?
Elaine Ostroff. Compared to most folks, I'm relatively new to Natick, but I came here as Josh's mom. And hi. And this is I love Monday mornings.
Thanks, Elaine. Carrie?
Good morning, Rich. Yeah, Carrie Butfield. You know me, town meeting member, co-founder of Renewable Natick, which kind of did the resolution that paved the way for the Sustainability Committee to start heading towards emissions. So, and overall general concerned environmentalist. So I'm curious to see additional things you might have to say in addition to this past Tuesday night.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. Bill?
Good morning, Rich, and welcome. Bill Ramage, town meeting member up for re-election. I'm a trail steward at Pegan Cove, so I'm interested in the environment and involved with EcoNatick, which is working with Earth Day this year. So that's my thing.
Thanks, Bill. Kathleen?
Hi, Rich. I think we probably met in passing briefly. I'm on the Library Board of Trustees. I was a librarian by profession for many years, so that's my passion, and I am currently a candidate for re-election there.
Thanks, Kathleen. Cindy? Got to come off mute. Yeah, there you go.
Good morning,
Great.
Cindy Bates. I moved here in the fall of 2019 from Roslindale, and I am a steward of the Takawambe Trail, where we're trying to get some goats up there to make a real meadow where it used to be a meadow. And I guess that's my official involvement with the town.
Thanks, Cindy. Bruce?
Hi, I'm Bruce Evans. I think I know almost everybody here. I am on the board, select board now, and I'm on the receiving end of Martin's committees. So we're having fun.
Thanks, Bruce. Sally?
Good morning, Richard. We're looking forward to hearing from you. I feel like you're a good friend, and I'm eager to hear what you have to say, especially about your experience being on the board for a while. So good morning to everybody.
Thanks, Sally. Pat?
Good morning. I wanted to just say hi to everybody and hi to Rich. Thank you, Bruce and Martin, and Doug and Martin, folks who are carrying on the CWAP mission and continuing the good discussions and dialogue that we have on Mondays. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Brindley.
Good morning, everyone. I've been a Natick resident for 23 years, something like that. I was participant and on the recycling committee for over 10 years. I was on the Pay as You Throw task force. I'm a town meeting member up for re-election. I'm happy that we do these conversations. I think it's really important, democracy in action, and I'm grateful. Thanks. Hi, Rich. Nice to see everybody.
Thanks, Brindley. And Carol.
Good morning. I'm really here. I just haven't turned on my camera yet because I'm running slightly late and I want to go comb my hair before you actually see me. So I'm Carol Gloff. I know Rich knows me. I served on the select board. I'm now a library trustee and I'm hoping to be reelected. And I will say about Rich, I'm going to put in a little pitch here. Rich and I served together on not only one, but two charter and bylaw review committees. So hopefully you see that as a positive that he served on that. But if not, then he and I are both in that same crazy category. So I will be listening and I will turn on my camera in a few minutes.
That's great. And Carol, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you're also on the town governance study committee. I've been actually chatting with Dan Sullivan, also on that committee, about seeing if we could get a couple of you folks to talk to Coffee with a Purpose about how that committee's going and what you folks see as the issues and so forth. And I know there've been some active Facebook chats on that topic, and I know Rich has been patiently explaining at some of these other forums what is the select board's job and what isn't, which might be one of the things this committee's looking at too. But that's a topic for another day. So,
but I'm sitting here nodding that we would be happy to do that, and then I realize you can't see me. So, okay, let me go comb my hair, and I'll be back.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks for the introductions, everybody. So, Rich, you know how this works. We'll turn it over to you. Take as much time as you like, and then we'll open it up for conversation.
Yeah, thanks everybody for showing up. And Pat, I've been watching this Coffee with a Purpose grow since you started it. What, about 3-4 years ago, over at Common Street. I'm typically unable to attend because I have a regular business meeting right at this time. So I would be attending more often if that weren't the case. But I really appreciate that this happens. And Doug, thanks for moderating. Most of you know me. I've lived here in Natick for 35 years. I'm not going to talk for a long time. I've been on a bunch of committees, 10 years on the finance committee, 18 or 19 years on town meeting. And I was elected, as most of you know, in September to fill a short term. And I'm running for re-election to the select board. And I'm really most interested in hearing what you guys want to talk about. And I want to do a lot of listening, which I think is I think that's one of the most important parts of the select board job. Okay.
I think you might have just set a record for briefest opening remarks. Good for you. Martin's got his hand up, so go ahead.
Okay, well, I have kind of an introductory question, kind of a softball question, but I'm kind of curious, actually. You've certainly watched many, many select board meetings in your life. But what have you learned about the experience of actually being on the select board in your short tenure there? That might have been different than what you expected. So let's say.
Well, it's that's a really great question, because I think that it's both more and less than what I expected. It's less in that the select board has pretty specific responsibilities, but in terms of running the town, it's mostly goal setting. it's not, we are the road commissioners, we approve certain financial things, but mostly we set goals for the town administration and set policies and things like that. And we make decisions about things like the Charles River Dam and the upcoming award for the Auburn Street RFP. And I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm not going to talk about that because we haven't made a decision yet. We're meeting Wednesday night, and I don't want to. I basically I can't. I don't want to talk about it until after we go public. So apologies in advance for that one. But it's really interesting. There's some real detail things like when we do water and sewer abatements, and when we, on the other hand, we don't really have we set policies for the town administration, but the town administrator sets the budget based on those policies and goals. So it's kind of an interesting balance between the detail and the high level. And that's been a big surprise to me in some ways.
Okay. Thanks. Bill?
Hi, Rich. At the one of the forums, you had mentioned some detail about the stretch code, the building stretch code. You seem to have more knowledge than the other candidates. I can't remember which forum it was because I've been to several. But I wonder if you could touch on that again. I think you had more to say. The question was whether we should implement the stretch code, and you said, well, we're already doing a lot of things. So could you flesh that out a little bit for us, please?
Sure. So there's we adopted the original stretch code back in, I think, 2009 or something. And we've been implementing it as, through that adoption, when the state issues new stretch codes, we're automatically using them.
What are stretch codes? Just for...
So the stretch energy code is a part of the state building codes that have to do with better energy efficiency in buildings, and they're extensions. So the current building code says you do X. Now I don't know what X is. I'm not a building code expert, but the standard building code says you do X. The stretch code says in addition to X, you want to get a little more efficient, or you want to do a little bit of additional stuff to get closer to clean energy or carbon neutrality or ecological friendliness and so forth. And we have adopted the stretch. So we're doing more than other municipalities to achieve some of these goals towards net zero and carbon and ecological friendliness in our new buildings. And the way it works is once we've opted in, there's certain aspects of the code that we now have to enforce. And then year over year, the state issues new stretch codes, and we're automatically opted in because we automatically have to use those because we opted in. Now, Bill, I think, is asking about the specialized stretch code, which is a new opt-in that we could choose to use. It imposes even more codes about energy efficiencies, electrification, net zero, and energy efficiency and so forth. And we're not opted into that specialized code yet. But what happens with this with either one, any stretch code, is that year over year, the components that were optional 2 or 3 years ago are now part of the real code. And then they've added new stretch options. And that'll happen with the specialized code as well. So even if we whether we opt in or not, eventually they're going to be part of the code. So in terms of opting into the specialized code, I think what I said at the Econadic Forum was, I like what Jillian had said, which is go slow to go fast. There are parts of that specialized code that look really interesting and may be difficult initially to achieve, at least in part because of supply chain issues. So there are a few other municipalities that are adopting the specialized code this spring. And I think that the right thing to do for that one is to wait and see how it goes with them. I'm pretty sure that Jillian and Claire are planning to put forward an opt-in in a year or so, which has to go through town meeting. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, Bill. If you want more.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful. Are there pieces
sorry if I got, by the way, I'm sorry if I got too much in the weeds on that.
No, I really appreciate it. I'll stop there. Thanks, Rick.
So Doug has stepped away for a moment. So since I am not actually sitting at the control seat, but next to it, I guess it doesn't seem like there's a million people ready to jump in. So I think rather than me trying to sort out the hand motion or the put down your hand thing, just jump in if people have questions.
Okay, I'll jump in again. It's a quiet period. I have a couple of questions dealing with open space, which, as you probably know, is kind of my there are actually two questions that are kind of separate, but maybe they get overlapped. So I'll just give them both at once. One is about the CPA oversight committee. It's actually called the Community Preservation Committee, and there's a warrant article in town meeting that will set up that committee to basically recommend the spending of the CPA funds that are going to come in. The proposal, actually, because of it comes from the state law, it's not an original proposal, is 5 seats on that committee are designated to particular boards and commissions that have particular interests in CPA funds, like conservation and planning board and rec and park. And the other 4 seats are at large, appointed by the select board. So my question would be, any philosophy you would have on those at-large seats when you get to appoint those 4 members, in terms of getting the right mix, the right expertise, the right representation, and so forth. And then I'll throw in my other question too, just so you know. There's kind of a relationship between them, but the Community Preservation Committee will be spending or recommending spending the CPA funds, of course, but there's other open space funds available, and there's still an FAR fund, and that is town meeting's responsibility with select board recommendation. And select board has had more of a role in open space recently, with when the FAR fund was set up. There's also been a lot of discussion on Chapter 61A property on Rockland Street, where the neighbors wanted to spend town money to preserve that, and the select board, I think correctly, decided to let that go as a cluster development, which let us preserve some of that open space without spending the money. So the question on open space is what would be kind of your philosophy in spending the was called the conservation fund, now called the FAR funds, in terms of making the best use of those funds for open space. So again, the 2 questions: one is appointment to the CPA committee, the other is philosophy on spending open space funds.
Well, I'm going to take those in reverse order, because the truth is I don't remember how much money is in the FAR fund. And what I do remember is that it really isn't enough.
That's right.
To purchase anything. I would assume that as we collect CPA monies, that we can supplement that and use it to buy appropriate open space if there is, you know, wherever there is any in town. That's really, you know, in terms of the spending, I really want to wait and see what becomes available and whether we have the money to spend on it. In terms of appointing the CPC, the CPC is for three purposes: open space, recreation, affordable housing, and historic preservation. And of those three, the two that are highest priority for me are the open space and affordable housing. So I would be looking to find people who are creative about, you know, identifying ways to leverage the CPA funds to achieve those goals. The CPC chooses projects, can put the money aside appropriately, and then takes it straight to town meeting for approvals. Once the board's appointed, the select board doesn't actually have a lot of say, but my goal would be to find people who can, you know, who are going to find creative ways to identify projects and in those areas and move those forward. And I hope there are a lot of people who are going to be applying, and I hope there are diverse people who apply, because when we talk about affordable housing, we have a real problem in town. And you know, open space is rare. We're a pretty developed community. So
if I could build on, I apologize for stepping away. Just to that specific example, or maybe even more generically, appointing people to committees, task forces, whatever. How does the town go about making it known that those positions are available, and what kinds of people are they looking for? I guess I'll leave it at that. But I mean, there's an undercurrent of there's a certain portion of the population that feels very much in the know about what's going on in town and how things operate. And then there's, I think, probably a much larger majority that has no idea what's going on and how things operate, and might be interested in these kinds of opportunities if they knew about them.
yeah, I mean, traditionally, you know, it's communication about open positions has been, you know, on the town website or through various meeting announcements. Communication to the public is a hard problem, and we've recently hired a communications director, and I know he's working hard on the website, and he's also working hard to improve our social media presence. Truth is, we've got to find better ways to communicate with the public, and we've got to find creative ways. You know, it'd be, you know, we've got very small bulletin boards on the corner of the town common, which are owned by Parks and Recs. But they're small. People, you know, they're hard to see as people drive through town. We don't have a lot of banner space. We don't have a lot of the moving display signs. You know, it's hard to find ways to be creative about communication, and we're working on it. And I'm hoping that the communications director finds some more creative ways. I also hope that when we hire the DEI director or DEIO director, that we're in the process, I believe, of interviewing, that they're going to help communicate and actually get to some of the more underserved people in town. Is, you know, we have a diversity problem in town as well, especially in government, and I want to see that change.
Who's responsible for that hiring? For the DI?
The town administrator is responsible for hiring that person.
Okay.
And I've been advised he's interviewing. The first time we posted the job, there were no responses, and they reposted the job, and it's there's been some, according to Jamie, there've been some good candidates that have come forward. So I'm hoping to see a hire pretty soon. So communication, it's a big problem, and I know Jamie's working hard on it, Jay's working hard on it, and I'm hoping to find creative people that will help improve the communication.
Thank you. Pat, you see you've got your hand up. You got to come off mute. There you go.
I saw the uptick in kind of communication from organizations like the farm and the library. I mean, I don't go through all of the social medias, but they seem to be becoming a little more modern in their way of, getting the word out. And I've noticed that Deb Mitchell too at Black Lives Matter seems to have some kind of a rolling feed, on Facebook, and it's pretty impressive. And they hosted a candidates night. So it seems like there are groups or organizations that are kind of learning the techniques of getting more information out on social media platforms. And I was wondering what your views on that, or what the select board could do to kind of move along with the new DOI person.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna admit I'm a complete neophyte on social media, and frankly prefer to stay that way. But I know, like I said, we've got a communications director, and I've talked to him about getting our social media presence updated, and he's working on it. There's a lot to do on our technology, and a lot to do on our website. And I know he's working really hard to improve our website, make it more obvious what's going on, make it easier to find things. And he's working on trying to figure out our social media presence as well. I also know the police and fire department have social media pages, and it's interesting because I don't see a lot from them. I'd like to see more. I think that Jay is going to probably be able to help with that. As far as the select board is concerned, it's our job to set goals on that. And one of the things I've done a few times on the board is say, hey, you're talking about this, maybe we want to get it onto social media. Maybe we want to, I mean, sometimes it's just enough to remind the administration that there are other avenues of communication that we got to remember to use. None of us is perfect, and we don't remember everything. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.
Yes, Rich, I am thinking of, communication. I'm disappointed in the use of our community center, the senior center. Kind of, I don't know, there's a wonderful ability, for example, to interface with the town and the government and how things are working. If we had maybe more meetings at the senior center, and the senior center is kind of quiet and lapsing. I just would like to know, is the select board working on some goals for more activities, more dynamism at the senior center?
That's a really good idea. In fact, I'm going to make a note about that, because not that I'm aware of. It's possible that there's something in the background that I just haven't caught up with yet. I've only been on the board for a few months. So I'm just going to give me a second to make a note so that I remember to follow up on that. I do know that there are activities over at the senior center. I get both through snail mail, I get information, and I also get information from the senior center through email. I get a regular email saying, here's all the activities that are going on. And I noticed they just started up cribbage again on Fridays, and maybe after the campaign season, I'll be able to go over and play some cribbage.
Well, they really try, but there's a lack of dynamism that used to be there before COVID, and the dining, the foods, the little shop, the classes. It's just there's something amiss, and I don't mean it's a big, huge thing. It might be a combination of many things, but I'd really love for the select board to give us some.
What town department does that fall under?
So it's so there's a I forget the name of the department, but it's under the same group. So Parks and Recs and the Senior Center are sort of co-affiliated under the same department head.
Department of
I know
Human
there's been some
Services.
turnover over there, and also COVID was a real problem. So I think that's contributing, Sally, to what you're seeing. I know that they're trying to get more activities over there, and like I said, I've made a note. I'll follow up to see if we can't improve things. I think Bruce has a comment.
Yeah, Rich, just the excuse me, the department is community services. And that now includes all the senior center type things, council on aging, and rec and parks.
And Veterans Affairs and
Veterans, yeah.
Affairs, et cetera.
Services and other, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks,
I
Bruce.
want to go to Kathleen, but I do also want to point out that it's like so much of the town, maybe so much of the world, I think they did it, community center did a great pivot during COVID to remote. Sarah and I are much more frequent users of events put on by them, but all remote since the pandemic. There isn't a week that goes by that we're not logged on for at least one event. So kudos to them on that. But like us all, there's the challenge of how do you transition back to in-person stuff. So Kathleen, you've got your hand up.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Rich. Rich, I wanted to circle back to the DEI position for the town. So I guess I'm not surprised to hear that there weren't good qualified applicants first time around, and I'm pleased that you feel that there are some now. One of the things that I've read recently is that DEI positions often fail because the role is given responsibility for making change, but not the authority to make change. So I don't know if you've seen the job description for this new position, but I'm wondering if there's a role for the select board there to be sure that this position can be effective and can help us to change if there is sufficient authority there.
Yeah, it's yeah, I hadn't seen that article. The job, as I understand it, the job description we posted is as much as anything else a training job and a coordination job, which means that their job is going to be to help all departments learn how to improve DEI across town. The select board absolutely has a role in making sure that town administration follows up when the DEI director makes recommendations. We can't say, this is going to happen. We can tell the town administrator, this is one of your goals. And that's the role. And I also know that the town administrator in particular is committed to meeting these goals because I've asked him. And so I don't think we're going to, I expect it'll be a slow process because bringing somebody new on and making change is hard. And we've got a lot of embedded ways of doing things. And Jamie is working really hard to change to get more creative about how town runs and how the town's organized. And this DI director is almost certainly going to be one way he's going to try and get creative. And as a member of the board, and I hope I'm reelected, I'm certainly going to keep that at the top of my priority list.
Great. Thanks much.
Thanks, Rich, and thanks, Kathleen. Pat?
Yes, Rich, I was going to ask a question about this information flow and how it works, because it seems to me, at least on a couple of issues, I know the board, select board really was not responsible for, but I, through the grapevine, I've talked to a lot of people about how the school committee kind of muffed the communication around the Johnson School and the decisions that were trying to be made. And, one of the school committee members was sidelined by conflict of interest, questions. And the other thing I was curious about was the South Natick Dam issue too. There seemed to be a lot of confusion around that issue, and then a burst of almost, I would call it, misinformation about the issue. And I know that there were people who were, dug in on kind of both sides. But that's where I think if the town had some way of making a clear message, I know you can't talk about it today about the South Natick Dam, maybe, but I think that the public is somewhat confused on some of these things.
Yeah, I can't really speak to the communication about the school committee because frankly, I haven't been paying as much attention to that as maybe I should have been. My daughter is a Johnson graduate. I'm a Johnson parent, and I'm sad to see the school go. Frankly, I've been around long enough. I expected it to go a long time ago, but I'm glad it lasted as long as it did. So, in terms of the dam, as far as I can tell, the communication from both the dam committee and the select board was very clear. The dam committee's report is as clear and complete a report as I've ever seen. And the town administration supplemented that with a bunch of FAQs that are also available to people. There was a lot of misinformation about the dam, and it's still swirling, frankly. And a lot of it was coming from residents who wanted a different decision than what the board made. When I voted for the dam breach, I looked at the report, I listened to the experts, I listened to people around town. I actually went out even before I was elected in September. I went out and I was talking to people and saying, what do you think about this issue? And when people had an opinion, they told me. And I didn't, I was listening. I didn't try to sway opinions. And there's a lot of support for keeping the dam, particularly around South Natick. It's not all around South Natick. And there's a lot of support for breaching the dam all around town, including South Natick. I think it was the right decision. I think it's ecologically the best decision there is. And it's the best decision for what our Native American citizens want. And I think it's the best decision overall. And from a liability issue, the breach of a dam in Hanover is a perfect example of what we don't want happening in Natick. That's a very similar dam to our dam. It breached itself and caused all that flooding in East Bridgewater just this last fall. We don't want that to happen here. So I think there is a lot of misinformation still swirling. We're going to see 3 articles about the dam on Springtown meeting. I'm interested to see what the Finance Committee recommends on those. And I'm sure we'll have a lively discussion at town meeting on those things. So communications, we can be as clear as we want, and frankly, people hear what they want to hear sometimes.
Mhm.
So
yeah, it's sad but true. to quote a Metallica song, I think. Sarah?
So I want to circle back to a couple comments ago about the diversity officer, and anybody who knows me, I'm always hammering the drum of everything's connected. So thinking about, I think it was, I can't remember, it was maybe whoever's question it was, it's just, would our future DEI person have the actual authority to get stuff done? You know, and some of what hopefully will change in town gets back to the affordable housing issue. And that in turn flows to town meeting often to approve zoning changes. And I'm thinking of I can't remember the name of it, the state has this new law that is forcing communities that have MBTA stations to submit plans of how they're going to increase their affordable housing around stations. So all of these disparate things I'm throwing into the pot here, because my question is how we handle the issue of potentially needing and hopefully wanting to make some changes that will make this town more affordable, to help diversify our population. How do we educate town meeting about this? And does the select board have any role in working with town meeting on this policy question of, if we are setting a goal that we want to make our town a more diverse and affordable place, some of that has to flow through town meeting. So do you have any thoughts on how we would potentially bring town meeting along on this process?
In 60 seconds or less.
So sorry for the throw all the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, but that keeps coming back to me as a longtime town meeting member. You know, I think probably the biggest thing I might be able to contribute to this problem as a town meeting member is voting for something that's going to help increase these, advance these goals. So.
You know, as you were talking, it occurred to me, one of the things that Framingham used to do when it had a town meeting was they would hold precinct forums in advance of town meeting to educate town meeting about what was on the warrant.
Mm-hmm.
And I've wondered if it would be possible to do something like that in Natick. The finance committee works really hard to get a recommendation book out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of work. 10 years on the finance committee, I can tell you it's a lot of work.
Yep.
But I wonder if there's I think it's a really good question whether there's a role for the select board to maybe hold meetings with the moderator or something in advance of town meeting to say, here are the ways these warrant articles are going to forward some of the town goals that you've stood up for. That might be something we could do, or just thought of that as you were asking your question. So
yeah, it just seems like, sometimes it feels like questions come out of off the floor of town meeting that, I'm sure you've seen this, Rich, the discussion will be flowing one way of, the body seems to be coalescing around one particular vote, and then some question will come and that totally shifts the discussion, and people end up focusing on kind of one small issue and saying, you know what, it seems like we haven't thought of this, we're confused, it's getting late, let's just refer this back. And sometimes I feel like it wasn't actually necessary to refer it. We actually might have had the ability to make a decision one way or the other if we had just thought about it a little more carefully. And that's, I don't know.
Well, and if part of people's presentation of those articles tied it back to an overarching objective.
And really, in terms of this sort of thing, unless the select board has actually sponsored a particular article,
right.
The select board really is the bully pulpit for that.
Right.
So, and that's probably the role that we need to leverage better.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, if it's a motion about, I don't even know, you know, are we going to adopt some new variant of some state regulation that just is like a rubber stamp? That's one thing. But if it's, you know, something that might be a little controversial initially until people kind of understand what it is, you know, and it's something that is in support of some goal that the select board has set. Um,
We'll move to Cindy in a second, but just to kind of follow on as an informative thing for the group on this topic. After, you know, we've got Rich today, we've got the remaining school board, we've got 2 more sessions about candidates, but then we focus on Springtown meeting in our remaining sessions in April, and Frank Foss will be coming to us on the 10th. So we'll get that same overview from him on his view on all the warrant articles and these kinds of issues. I think would be good for that discussion. And for those that were with us at the very beginning of the call, we were teasing the idea of having Carol and others on the Town Government Study Committee also come speak with us about that. So this seems like a germ of a pretty good idea that maybe can also get fleshed out in those discussions. So Cindy, you've got a question.
Hi, yes, now I have 2, I get, or a comment. I really like the idea of precinct meetings or forums, and I would hope that non-town meeting members could be present. It's you know, is the town meeting, like if you have a town meeting that's not representative, then each citizen votes for themselves. But when you have a representative town meeting, I feel like I have my precinct people, but how do they represent me if they don't even know me? So some sort of mechanism for that, I would support. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, and I've said this before, but I'm not sure it was when you were here, Rich, but I disputed a parking meter issue in the city of Newton, and I automatically got onto the mayor's weekly email, which I continue to receive despite being able to unsubscribe, just because I like reading it. And it takes me about 30 seconds to read the whole thing. The first part is official business. And then anything that's not official is PSs. And sometimes there's 6 or 7, you know, like the Girl Scouts are doing this and the something group is doing that, and come and see this. So go support that. But it's, I don't have to go looking for it. I'm not on any social media. I don't really want to be. I don't want to see the daily ins and outs, but if the town is doing stuff, I'd like to know. And there's no newspaper anymore. So if there was something that came from the town administrator's office or the communications office that came once a week or once a month, it just said, this is what's happening, I would read it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll talk to Jay.
And then they're all archived. That you can actually see the ones in Newton, they're archived there.
I made a note.
And then you can go back and look if you missed one or whatever, they are there.
We had a former town administrator who used to put a 1-page newsletter in with the water bill. So at least quarterly you were getting something. That was kind of.
If you're a homeowner,
yes,
pay your own water bill.
That's a good
I'm a
point.
Renter.
That's a good
And
point.
it was actually in the tax bill, and we've asked Jamie to start doing that again, and realizing that it only gets to taxpayers. But I'll suggest to Jay maybe set up that kind of a mailing list. I think that's a great idea.
This was involuntary, right? I didn't ask to be on this, because I emailed or filled out some form on the city website saying, yo, you guys charged me 50 cents when you shouldn't have, the meter was broken. I just got on it all,
yeah,
just because.
All right, good suggestion and noted. Excellent. Carrie?
Real quick question. Actually, you just mentioned the name Jay once again, Rich, just a moment ago. I don't think you mean Jay Ball, do you? Or is there's another Jay on?
No, Jay, I really have trouble pronouncing his last name. Appa,
Okay.
he's the communications director. He works for Jamie
Okay.
Erickson.
Poropatic.
Or who you kept referring to.
Poropatic. I just can't pronounce it, and I've apologized to him like 5 times for that.
I've practiced.
No, he's not talking about Jay Ball. So
No,
who is this Jay person? Okay.
Yeah, definitely somebody that we probably want to get to come to Coffee with a Purpose, actually.
that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, on my to-do list. I'm sure he's a busy guy, but cool. Wow, no one's got their hands up, but I'm sure people have got questions. I've got one, actually, while people are thinking about it. Rich, let's see, how do I phrase this? Since you've had to say in response to a bunch of questions, not so much today, but some at the other forums, well, that's not really select board's job, or, here's our role, well, here's what we do, what we don't do. Is there something that you wish the select board did have authority over that you don't? Or the flip side of that, is there something that you guys do have responsibility that you feel just isn't in the right place in the town that you would want to move in or out if possible?
Well, in terms of, what the select board is responsible for that maybe doesn't need to be, or whatever, I don't know enough yet. 6 months in the job is not enough to learn all of that stuff, frankly. I know, for example, and this is a trivial example, but the select board has to sign all the weekly warrants in order to pay the bills, including payroll. It seems that that probably is not the most necessary thing for the select board to get involved in. One of the reasons the select board appointed the town governance study committee is to figure those things out, what should be or shouldn't be. I don't know enough, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from the town governance study committee to find out what their recommendations are around things like that. In terms of what I wish the select board had more responsibility for, again, I'm not really sure yet what I would put on that, because I haven't seen enough. I mean, I've been involved in town government for a long time, between town meeting and the finance committee, and I suspect there are some things I wish we could do, and I don't know off the top of my head what those might be right now. So.
Okay. Before I go to Pat, just because the governance committee has been referenced in your answer, I just want to give Carol a chance to weigh in if she chooses to. There you go.
Sure. I will say, and that I don't anticipate that the Town Governance Study Committee is going to be coming back with a recommendation at the level of should the select board be signing the warrants. We're just not getting into that granularity. And so not to, disagree with Rich, that's not the point at all, but I just want to make that clear. We did, try to be really brief here, but we interviewed close to 50 people who are very involved in town government, whether they are officials, hired officials like the town administrator, or whether they are volunteers. So every member of the select board was interviewed. Some former select board members were interviewed. Committee chairs were interviewed. That was our first thing. And said, okay, what's working really well? What isn't working really well? And we tried very hard not to give people direction. Like we didn't say, so what do you think town meetings working, with any sort of a tone of voice? And most of these interviews were done in person, by the way, so either Zoom or in person. Then we did a survey, and some of you may have received it, and some of you may have been interviewed, I'm not certain. that was done electronically where we sent out a survey and to committee members and town meeting members and all employees. And we had about 249, I think it was 249, 250 responses to that. And at first I thought, oh, that's not a very good response rate. But for that type of survey, I'm told it's actually a very good response rate. Anyway, so we collected information there. And again, we tried not to be too directive in what we were asking people to give us feedback on. There are reports, you can find reports that we've written on those two sets of data collection. Now we are at the point where we are looking at, okay, what are our options that we can suggest to the town that might fix or improve a particular issue that was identified? And I'll be quiet unless you want me to say more.
No, I think actually that just turns out, in my opinion, to be a good teaser or advertisement for having more time at a future session on that. So thank you for that. Pat?
Well, and before you,
yeah, sorry.
Before you go on, you know, if you've got ideas, there's, I think those surveys, if I remember correctly, the surveys are still open. No, the surveys are not open. Okay, I was going to make a plug for you, Carol. So go ahead. Thank you.
Nice try, Rich.
All right, Pat.
Rich, you mentioned or referenced the board's role as really setting goals. How do you routinely, how does the board set their goals for each year? Or, I mean, I know there's a 2030 plan and everything, but I'm just curious, they're more like your year-to-year operations. How do you do that? How does the board do that?
Well, I haven't been through one of those processes yet. I've read through the goals, and you know, select board has its own goals, and the select board also sets goals for the town administrator. I've read through the goals that were set last year for the board. My understanding is after the election, we'll go through that process again, and I'll get some firsthand, assuming I'm reelected, and I hope I am. I'll get some firsthand experience actually setting those goals. But it's you know.
So does it occur after each round election cycle? Is that how
I think so, and you know, I don't see Bruce here, so he.
Nope, there he comes.
There he is. Yeah,
I'm still here.
Okay, so the question was when are the select board and town administrator goals set? And I thought they were right after the election cycle, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. Honestly, I was a whirlwind last year. So, and we kept talking about them. So I think they're typically tied to the calendar year, I believe. So it's an ongoing thing, and it's quarter to quarter, because I'm trying to remember when we did his review, which was sometime, I would say, in the last, I thought it was in February, but I could be mistaken. It was sometime early this year. So I think, you know, goal setting is typically, you have the sort of annual goal, and then you have adjustments quarterly almost, maybe even more frequently than that. But remember, I've only got 6 months on Rich, so I'm not exactly a veteran of it myself. So
yeah, and I will say you know, goals are goals, and one of the things that's already become clear to me is that, you know, sometimes we'll create a goal and then circumstances will have to deprioritize it or prioritize something higher. And you know, we certainly, there's been a couple of those that have come up where Jamie has come to us and said, you know, I need to work on this instead of that. And it's, you know, certainly keep that in mind. Circumstances can change what's most important at any given, you know, in any given period of time. So I'm hoping, you know, and a lot of the goals were all year to year. So some of the goals we've set, some of the goals the board has set, you know, we'll evaluate how well we've done, and we'll, you know, recast them for the next set. So, I mean, that's a good goal setting, you know, good goal setting process is to make sure that we're paying attention both to what's going on now as well as what's coming up. I hope that answers your question.
No, no, thank you.
Yeah. Who else has got something for Rich at this point? Yeah, Cindy.
Could you just refresh my or I don't even, since I'm very unaware. There are how many members on the select board and how many vacancies and how many people running?
So there are 5 seats, 2 of which are up for re-election. Mike Hickey is not running for re-election, which actually saddens me because he's been a great partner in the last 6 months. And there are 4 people running for the 2 open seats, including myself as the incumbent. And I'm certainly hoping you guys are going to vote for me. I'm asking for your votes. And I'd like to continue to do this job.
And this is a 3-year term, is that right?
It is a 3-year term. The terms are for 3 years. I filled Karen Edelman Foster's seat after she had to step down due to job commitments.
And are they on a rotating basis such that each election there's at least 1 seat open?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. One question I had been thinking of asking, so I guess I'll ask it since no one else has got their hand up at the moment, is do you have any way of talking with peers in other towns? Like what communication occurs, if any, with folks in similar positions elsewhere to just trade ideas on process or objectives? You know, hey, all the towns are doing this, we should do this too. Or here's a best practice type you know, thing for, or is it considered that each town is unique enough that we've really got to customize how we do things to our situation?
Oh, well, we all live in Massachusetts, so there's not that much. I mean, there are things that are unique about Natick. We wouldn't have a separate town and love it so much if we wouldn't have some things that were unique about us. There is an organization called the Mass Municipal Association, MMA, and I went to their conference in January, I want to say, and it was really eye-opening. And I actually had a chance to talk to mayors and select board members from other towns. I had a really good conversation with a select board member from Pelham, in fact, and the mayor of Waltham. There are ways to communicate. I'm not as familiar with them right now because I've only been on the board for 6 months. I've only been connected up to MMA for 6 months. There are definitely ways to do that. And similar to the way there's a town clerks organization that Diane is part of, similar to the way there's a moderators association that Frank's hooked up with. It was really, like I said, it was really eye-opening to see how much resources actually available. They also offer regular webinars on different topics, and I've attended a couple of those. And those are free. So, yeah, there are ways. I'm not as hooked into them as I'd like to be, and hoping to get hooked up more, assuming I'm reelected.
Thank you.
Which I'm really hoping for, and
Brindley has put in the chat a link to that Mass Municipal organization, as well as a plug for folks that haven't had enough candidate forums yet. But Yes for Natick is running their forum. I believe it's tonight, and
it's tonight.
They prefer pre-registration, so the link in the chat is there to register, but the Zoom link for the meeting is also there if you just want to jump in on it. And I see both Bill and Martin have their hands up. So Bill.
I just wanted to follow up on what you were just saying, Rich. My understanding is the select board is a volunteer organization, and that it takes a lot of time. And I know FinCom was the same way, and I want to thank you for that, putting in that time for the citizens. My question really was, you mentioned this organization, and my guess would be that there is some cost in terms of attending that. And I wondered if the town is at least supporting you in that way by paying registration fees or mileage or whatever.
Yeah, the select board has a budget for forums like that. A lot of the webinars are free, so that's useful. But the town pays the dues for the MMA and does pay for the registration fees for the conference. One of my fellow board members said to me a few weeks ago, "This is the most expensive volunteer opportunity I've ever had." You know, it's there's a lot of time that I spend not in meetings, where I'm looking into things, doing research or attending webinars or just talking to people. And it's almost more than it was on FinCom in some ways. It's a lot easier to read a budget. I mean, I have a financial background, you know, so I can read a budget and pretty quickly understand what's going on and then ask the justification questions. But policy things where I don't know anything about it, I have to do research to learn. And I spend time doing that. You know, I don't know anything about alcohol sales, and we've got to set an alcohol policy. And listening to the people who are dealing with, you know, addiction and learning how to set those policies that allow for, you know, good business in town and yet protect people who are at risk. There's a lot of research and learning to do, and I'm trying to do it as quickly as possible. So
thank you.
Yeah, Pat had also put in the chat his thanks for the just phenomenal amount of work, Select Board and FinCom, and probably other committees, but those are the two that quickly come to mind. It's just
planning board.
Planning board as well.
I just want to shout out the planning board spends a lot of time trying to make sure that development in our town is you know, going forward, and also that the zoning rules make sense and things like that. So that's a lot of work too. Just a shout out to them.
Cool. Martin.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to bring up something else that I saw in the chat. I don't think it's been addressed. Maybe it has. Way back at the beginning of the chat from Deb Mitchell, is there a community liaison officer in addition to the communications officer? So someone to help with community outreach. I don't know if that's been addressed. And if not, do you have any ideas on how to better, you know, communicate? We have talked about the fact that many people in the community are not informed about what's going on, and it's kind of difficult to reach out to some of them. So maybe you have some ideas on that.
Well, I believe that's going to be part of what the DEIO director is going to be working with the communication director to kind of do. I don't believe we have a specific community liaison officer in that, you know, specifically in that sense. I think it's the kind of thing that actually needs to be spread out over different departments, because, you know, you're going to have different liaising to do for the assessors than for the Board of Health, than for, you know, other outreach. So I think one of the keys is, you know, we've got a communication director. He's trying to improve communication channels. The DEIO director is going to help us figure out how to reach out to, you know, different diverse communities, and you know, teach the other departments how to reach out for themselves as well. Until we actually have the DEIO director, it's not we're going to see how that works and how we can approve it once that person is on board.
Cool. Just one other question I've got. This might be one of these ones that falls completely outside the purview of select board, but we've commented from time to time how much people have enjoyed having the opportunity to go to the Citizens Leadership Academy. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Which I think has not been held for a while. Do you have any information or thoughts about whether is it going to come back? Are there other versions of how it could be offered that might be more, less resource intensive for the people to put it on, or more easily consumed by townspeople? I think that, there's certainly an interest in there in the town of opportunities to learn how the town works. But again, it might not be in your wheelhouse at all. So,
well, it's interesting. The Equity Task Force actually recommends bringing that back, and
okay.
it's in their goals to bring it back. I haven't had any explicit conversations with Jamie about doing that. I think it's a great idea. I'd love to see it come back, and it's there's the other thing that along the same lines that they recommended was a regular newsletter issued in multiple languages, and so that's a challenge because we got to find people to translate to the appropriate languages. But yeah, I want to see that come back, and if I'm reelected to the board, I'll certainly get that, hopefully get that in front of Jamie as one of the goals to achieve. Now that we're sort of getting to the endemic phase, it might be easier to hold those meetings at those trainings. But certainly it was a great way to educate people about what's possible and what the government does and how to get involved and introduce them to their government.
Thank you. And Cindy has put in the chat the name, including the spelling of the last name of our communications director, Jay
Horapatich.
I understand why it's difficult to pronounce. Just looking at it.
It took me 15 minutes to find it.
Oh, that's ironic.
Not on the
given
Natick
what
website.
The role is. Yeah.
Very ironic. Very ironic. Yeah.
Wow.
The job for that person is clear now.
Yeah, well, and he is a Natick resident, and he left private industry to come to work for the town to help us. So
Nice.
Really glad to have him on board.
It's fantastic.
And he walks to work.
Nice.
Cool. Pat, you've got your hand.
Yeah, a quick question for you, Rich, and maybe Martin. How do we vote again? Or can we go to town hall and get our mail-in ballots? And I just kind of need a quick review of how that works, because one of the goals I thought was to try to get more people to participate in our local elections.
Yeah, I saw. I think we announced this at our last board meeting. But early ballots are available. You can go absentee vote. If you're not going to be in town, you can vote at the counter, or you can request an early ballot. We're not doing. I don't believe we're doing vote by mail specifically, but you can go get an early ballot.
Can you get it online by requesting it?
I'd like to. Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
That's incorrect. You can absolutely request to mail a vote by mail ballot. The request needs to be done by the 21st. Diane Packer at the town clerk office said that if you wait until the 21st to request your vote by mail ballot, you probably won't get the ballot in time in order to get it back in time. The ballots it's not like a national where it has to be postmarked by March 28th. It has to actually be in hand by the close of polls on March 28th, which is 8 p.m.
Can you actually go online and ask for through the clerk's office? Is that the way?
Yes, You can do it online. You can also go to the clerk's office and ask them to send you a ballot, and they will, or you can go to the clerk's office and ask for a ballot right then and there.
Okay. And then you drop it
they
off.
They can't let you leave with a ballot. So if you go in and request one, you have to fill it out and submit it right then and there, or they can mail you one.
Oh, I see.
And then there
They-
is a
they
drop, there
also-
is still a drop box.
One other thing, they also highly recommend mail-in versus absentee. It's just easier for them to process. So I was in there. I just went in and requested one and got it a couple days later. So it's working well.
Let's see, Carol's also got her hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so I think what Rich meant was, and it's not what he said, but there is no early in-person voting. So it's not like they've got a polling place set up, gonna have a polling place set up someplace and you can just go and check in and vote like you were at your regular polling place. I actually had thought there was not early voting, there was just absentee, but the town clerk corrected me on that. So there is early voting by mail or at the town clerk's office, or you can drop it in that box, that nice box that's on to the left at town hall. That's very secure, and you can drop it in there, and then they empty it several times a day.
Yeah, and I just posted the annual town election link in the chat for people.
Right.
The truth is, I'm not paying a lot of attention to that, so I plan to go vote in person on the day of. So
Yeah. Thank you for that question and for all the information.
yeah,
That's
really
great.
thank you, Brinley and Carol, for helping me with that answer.
Cool.
It's pretty clear. I don't know everything.
It's so all good. I was anticipating myself personally that there would be in-person voting, or that some of what has been happening would continue to be in place. So I have spent a lot of time figuring it out so I could make sure to explain it to people, because it is such a dramatic change from last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're getting close to 10:30. Carol, did you want to add something?
I was just gonna say, until COVID started, maybe slightly before that, the only way to vote early was by absentee. That was the only way. Actually, I think it started just the in-person early voting started maybe a year or two before that, but that was the only way. So they're not doing in-person early voting because and also that the state's not requiring that, or I don't even know if they're option, but it's expensive to do that. Pay the staff, anyway, but pretty good. There's a couple of options. Thanks.
Yeah, I would say earlier in the discussion when we were talking about comparing or learning from other towns, I was going to ask a question of, well, gee, how do we compare to other towns? Because I know most of us feel like we feel so blessed to live in Natick. It's a great town full of amazing volunteers, and along the lines of voting, when you read in the news or hear on the news about the challenges of voting in other parts of the country, we are so blessed to live in this state and in this town, and to have it as easy as it is. It could always be better, but yeah.
But yeah, it's I just went through training to become a poll worker, and it was really, really interesting to to hear our training and to contrast that with what's going on in other parts of the country. And I just echo what Doug says. We are blessed here in Massachusetts. So.
Pat, you've got
one more quick kind of dumb question about voting. If you go into the clerk's office and ask for the mail-in ballot, can you can I do that and ask for one for my wife too, or do people have to be in person?
Bill's giving a thumbs up. Apparently you can. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes, you can, Pat. You just have to fill it out as a representative. It was no problem getting one for Gwen.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Well, Rich, I want to thank you again for coming. I give you the opportunity for a closing statement, although I think you've said a lot of times, so you hope for our votes. I think you've presented yourself very well this morning. Do you have any closing thoughts for us? Or?
Well, mostly that I really appreciate that you guys are all paying attention and showing up to learn about me and learn about everybody else. This town succeeds because we have people who step up. I think you guys step up in different ways, and just showing up to say I'm interested in what's going on is a way to show up. I hope I've presented myself well. I hope I've answered your questions effectively. I'm absolutely willing to hear anything else you might have to say. And I'm asking for one of your 2 votes on March 28th. I'd like to keep doing this job and continue to serve this town.
All right. Thank you for that. And as a reminder to folks, next week we'll have our remaining 2 school committee candidates, Matt Brand and Donna McKenzie, I believe, followed by Roger Scott, who I believe is in Israel at the moment, but will be fresh back from abroad and speak to us the day before the election. And then after that, we'll turn our attention to, as I mentioned earlier, to spring town meeting. We'll have Frank Foss with us, I believe, on the 10th. The day before town meeting, we'll have just as an internal discussion particularly for the town meeting members among us, and there are many, to talk about that as well. So with that, I guess I will wish everybody a great day and week. Oh, and actually, one other thing, expect the announcement for next week's Coffee with a Purpose a little bit on the early side. Sarah and I are going to be away for the week. Martin is going to send it out, but he's also traveling, so it needs to go out a little bit earlier in the week than it would normally go. But it's the same bat time, same bat channel. So as always.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, bye now.
Sidney,
Bye,
we'll try to
everyone.
call you right now. Yeah.